persisting data. Okay, so if you remember, in the previous chapter we learned about how to structure your code and save data. Like in the activity we had to create a repository and use this repository to access and save data using a room database, right? So now the scenario here is like we're going to use the alternative way of saving the data, right? But why do we need the alternative approach? Okay, so this is the question. So we can have like, so imagine we can like we need a scenario like you need to for example integrate a third-party API, like right, that uses something like OAuth to implement login in with the Facebook, Google, and such kind of APIs. So the way this mechanism works actually is as follows. So they give you a token and that you have to store it locally, and then should be used to send all the other requests to access user data, right? So now we have a big question here. So the question is, how can we store that token? Okay, so can we use the room database to just to store that one particular token? So it doesn't make sense, because room is a very huge Android architecture component, and it needs a lot of like setup. Like for example, you have to create the entity, you have to create the DAO, you have to create the database, right? And you have to, it's also very expensive in terms of implementation and also in terms of the users. So so what are some alternative approach to save some light approach to save the token in your application, right? So so there are some multiple approaches. Okay, like we can use shared preferences or maybe data store. So shared preferences actually is a functionality that allows you to save booleans, integers, floats, long strings, and sets of strings into your XML file, right? So when you want to save new values, you specify what values you want to save to the associated key, and when you're done you commit the changes, and which will trigger the save to the XML file in the asynchronous way. The shared preferences mapping are also kept in the memory, so that when you want to read this value, it's instantaneous. So therefore remove the need for the asynchronous call to read the XML file. So actually now we have multiple approaches, as I told you, to to save your preferences. One is a shared preferences that we will be discussing in this topic, but yeah, for about data store we will be discussing in the next upcoming session. So without so let's go through the shared preference actually, guys. So the shared preferences actually, what is a shared preference and how to implement that? Okay, so shared preference is actually pretty simple. So actually I have created a simple shared preference like activity, and here the way to access the shared preference object is pretty simple. You just need to get shared preferences, your preference preference file name, and then you actually pass it, and you view in the private mode, right? So and this is the best mode to view, because of the like potentially for the security risk we just view it in a private mode. And if you want to write down into your preference file, you need to get access to the preferences editor, right? So editor will give you the access to write the data. You can then write your data in it. Once you finish writing, you have to apply the changes that you will trigger persistence to the XML file and change the in-memory values as well. So actually as I told you, this is just for getting your set preference. Then what about like updating, or then you just get your editor like updating, shared preferences, you get your editor first, edit, then you have, with your editor you put your like for example my key, also actually your first key, then you pass the value to true or false according to your choice that you want to save. And yeah, you can just put, like, let me do apply. Okay, I can put string your key to my your string value, right? You can put, as I told you, you can put boolean, strings, long, as per your choice. And finally you have to apply all the edits that you have done. And so you can also pretty much, if you want to clear everything that you have saved, then it's also pretty simple. You just need to editor dot clear, just calling this method. You can just, but after you clear you just need to apply also, right? So like clear and apply. Okay, so this apply method is really important. Now whenever ever we make changes, we have to apply. Okay, so this is the situations, right guys? Okay, so yeah, so let's go and check out some simple examples, right? Okay, so yeah, let's go and implement this shared preferences. So the first thing that you have to always check whenever you are implementing anything is the libraries, the necessary libraries that we have just implemented, like the dependencies that you have implemented or not, right? So just go to your Gradle and check out if you have like implemented the view model and live data dependencies. So this is our first step, right? And then so let's make our wrapper class, okay, for our shared preferences. So I have created a subfolder like processing data shared preferences. Yeah, just let's create a class called preference wrapper. So this preference wrapper, actually we will have is a private val shared preferences, and what it's gonna do is okay, actually it's gonna have a wrapper for our private val text live data table live data and string. Okay, so but before that I will just want to make sure that, guys, what we are implementing actually is uh, our shared preference activity is something like this one. Okay, so it has text view, edit text, and a button, right? So we have this and what we are gonna do is we're gonna save the like use the shared preference to display the text view with the data saved in the shared preferences, right? So this is our that's we are gonna do here, and we're gonna see the use case of shared preferences here. Okay, guys, so what about the okay, let me just finish up my preference wrapper. So shared preferences, register on shared preference change listener. Okay, so here when the key is your key, okay, so let me also create my key. Let me make my key outside to as a global constant, so it's a text. Then we have our text like data to post the value. Preferences, get string. Okay, pass the default value of empty string, right? So here first you have to note that we have added a listener, right? So so that when our set preference values changes, we can look up to the new value and update our live data model. So this will allow us to observe the live data for any changes and just update the UI. The save text method will open the editor, set the new value, and apply the changes, right? So the get text method will read the last saved value, set it in live data, and return the live data object. Okay, so this is helpful in the scenarios when the app is open and we want to access the last value prior to the app closing. So now let's set up the application class. So my application class is let's go and check my application class in your manifest. So we have not application, but it's yeah, we can use it. So let's create a it init val preferences wrapper, and let's instantiate this preference wrapper preferences. Wrapper will be a instance of the preference wrapper, get shared preferences. And okay, let me make my preference as a prefs context mode context mode private. Okay, sorry guys. Okay, so obviously you have to whatever application you are using, you have to obviously declare in your application. Okay, and with the appropriate attribute, that is this is the attribute that you have to declare it. And let's go and create the view model. It's like preferences model. So obviously here we are gonna extend a view model, and we have two functions to save the text. Okay, obviously we need also the instance. Previous wrapper, preference wrapper, and save the okay, but my preference wrapper, I need to update my preference wrapper with the necessary methods. So let's go and create the necessary methods. Save text, pass the text, share preferences, and edit it. As I told you, it's pretty simple. Put string and your key text, pass the text and apply you apply it in this way, and also you have to get the text, which is a data string, post value, shared preferences, get string text, and the default value of a empty string, right? And return the text like data. Okay, so now let's go to the preferences view model and update the necessary methods. Get text will return a live data, passing the string, return the wrapper, get text. Alright guys, so now finally in our activity, obviously I need to just this was just for my demonstration. So what you simply need to do, okay guys, let's do some little modification. Okay, okay, so now we can use the data binding here and update the view. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use the preference like the view model. So first okay, we actually don't need this. Let me do it in a separate function. So take the view. Okay, what we are gonna do here is we're gonna wrapper, okay, our application is called node application, preference wrapper, and then we view model provider, object and factory. So what we have to return here is preference view model, preference wrapper is this so then we finally have to get the preference view model. Okay, so we get the instance of our preference view model, right? So now we can use this view model to get the text. Observe this, because get text will return the view model, and we can pretty much observe and update our view is like by binding activity main, it's a text view, and update the text with the text that is we have observed, right? And finally we can also binding button. On the click of the button, we have to save the new value to the shared preference, right? And so if view model save text, like you have your binding edit text, you get your text to string, and this is pretty much saving to your preferences, and this is pretty much to your updating the view from your shared preferences. Okay, so yeah, this is pretty okay. So now we can pretty much run our application and check if it is pretty working fine. Okay, let me save I save key. Okay, so it's already saved. So now I can what I can do, now I have saved it, right? I close my application, and now if I run again, yeah, you see I have the view updated with the value that I have saved as a shared preference. So yeah, this is pretty working fine. This is one of the very simple use case of how to use this shared preferences, guys. And that's it, guys.